Hi, I'm Michelle Saumberfield. Happy Mother's Day! It is Sunday, May 9th, 2021, and it's Mother's Day Sunday. The weather is not too nice here in the Indianapolis area. I have to say, it's pretty rainy and gray. But I woke up this morning pretty early and I said to my boyfriend, thank God the weather was so nice yesterday. Yesterday was his daughter's college graduation, so we went to visit her on her campus and we walked all around campus. It was absolutely gorgeous. The architecture, amazing. Like some of the buildings just literally made me tingle because they were such works of art and really old, grand buildings, brick buildings, beautiful buildings with all kinds of arches and structure that absolutely amazing. I would have loved to have, gone to a campus that had a lot more old architecture, although I love Penn State. Um, but it was beautiful. And she had a list of places, different fountains, different sculptures, different archways and gates that she wanted to have her picture taken at. So we walked all around campus. And of course, I was wearing a dress and heels for the first time in, I guess, a month since we visited her for Easter in April, because I haven't been dressing up because of the COVID lockdown and working from home all the time. So anyway, it was gorgeous. I'm so grateful for that. I never married her father, but I've been with him for almost 18 years. It'll be 18 years in August 2021. And so I'm basically her unofficial stepmother. And, we were all celebrating her day. It was her father, her boyfriend, who we really like, and her best friend, who, of course, we also are really fond of, and my boyfriend and I. And it was just amazing. So maybe that got me off on a tangent thinking about the second book that I wrote. So I guess I'm going to free flow things. I'm not sure exactly what's going to come out of my mouth because I never really 100% know. I just kind of start these videos with some kind of concept and wing it. So hopefully what I say makes sense. But I did write a book because I believe in reincarnation. I wrote a book which I published in fall of 2019 called Marilyn, Not Just Another Girl, The Myth About Sleeping in the Nude. And it's basically about my life as Michele. I was born in 1964, 23 months after my last past life death. And I talk about how I grew up, how I came to believe in reincarnation. I talk about my early adulthood. I talk about my middle-aged years. And then I talk about going into my 50s, having skin cancer surgery, which really upsets me. And I talk about how I came to the conclusion that it's now or never. I'm not getting younger. I don't know what my health will always be. I've got to do something to tell people some things I've wanted them to know for years about Marilyn's life and about Marilyn's death. So I wrote this book because my soul was Marilyn Monroe's during its last past life. And after I wrote Marilyn, Not Just Another Girl, I followed it up with another book which just came out in March of 2021 called Marilyn, Thereafter the Fall, My Consequential Reincarnation. Now, this book kind of is a follow-up book. Again, I talk somewhat about my childhood so you understand my formative years. But I also talk about getting involved with my boyfriend who I met when I was 39. And it was after a series of really crazy relationships and flings and things like that. And I know that there were different people who commented that their favorite part of my first book was when I met the right man and finally found true love, as opposed to always being in situations with guys who were cheating or lying or cynical or scammers or whatever. I'm not a bad boy chaser, but a lot of times bad boys are very good at pretending they're good guys until you're hooked on them. And then you kind of just don't want to believe that they're all bad and you want to forgive them. And or at least that's how I was. I would fall into that trap where I would think love is about constantly overlooking things. Love is about constantly forgiving. Love is about being devoted to your man no matter what. And then I would end up in relationships a lot longer than I should, even though they weren't very functional on some levels. So some people told me that when they read my first book, they thought it was great when I finally met the right man, who I've been with since I was 39. And I'm 56 now. So again, we've been together almost 18 years. But I kind of thought, wow, yeah, I know I had to cover a lot in my first book, so I really breezed over things. And I do really love my boyfriend. But I kind of really had to breeze over things because there were so many things I wanted to cover in my first book. And I thought, well, what if I really told the truth about how difficult my 40s were and how difficult it was actually being a stepmother, constantly having my boyfriend's not very nice ex in the picture, manipulating things. If I talked about the things I struggled with emotionally because I had to move to another state in order to accommodate him and his child and his ex-wife. And instead of, being around my family, which I really would have preferred. So I thought, well, what if I make that be part of my second book? That's by no means all my second book is about. But you can tell that the relationship is probably, I'd say, in 3 different chapters in the middle of this book. So there's this stage where my boyfriend and I meet, we're blissfully happy, we're in love, we're in lust, this and that, but he has to make a decision because things are starting to get strange with his ex-wife. He has to make a decision about whether or not he's going to continue raising his daughter from a distance, or if he's going to move to the same state she's in and live with her and be more a part of her life, in the flesh. So that's one chapter. There's another chapter where I talk about, okay, then when we did decide to move to Indiana from Pennsylvania, what happened during basically the decade that followed that? What were all the trials and tribulations? What happened when on a regular basis we were around his child and ex-wife? Now his ex-wife, I don't know that she's ever been diagnosed yet, but at some point before they split up their marriage, she was basically told she probably has borderline personality disorder, and she didn't want to hear about that because she looked at that, I guess, as a flaw or something really wrong with her in a really negative way, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we live in a world where there's lots of doctors and diagnoses and medications and therapies, and I can get help and change and make all my relationships better and maybe feel better too, not so emotionally, from one extreme to the next. Instead of taking responsibility for things, she basically lived in denial and decided everything was always somebody else's fault, and she wasn't going to pursue getting any kind of help. So that was a big factor in becoming involved with my boyfriend and staying in that relationship and becoming a stepmother. Now, my boyfriend and I never got married, and I explain why in my book. It's me. But I do consider myself to basically be his daughter's stepmother since I've known her since she was 4. She was almost 5, but not quite. And I'm trying to think, is she 22, 23 now? I can't keep track. I think she's going to be 23. Yeah, I think in the fall. But anyway, she just graduated college, and we're all very proud of her. She's very smart and talented and cute, and turned into a lovely, young, poised young lady. But things were not so easy in the beginning. And I realized that for a child, a lot of times if the adults around them are in disarray, that can affect their personality too. So she was very hyper and bossy, and there were a lot of issues with her as well. And as any step-parent knows, it's hard to be the step-parent because you don't hold the same authority in the child's mind that their real parent does. I also had to deal with my boyfriend, who was always flip-flopping back and forth in terms of just, he was kind of emotionally held hostage because he always wanted to be his daughter's favorite parent, and he he just wanted to be the fun guy all the time. So he could admit to me that she was behaving badly, but then he'd turn right around and reward her when she was in the middle of behaving badly, because he wanted to be the fun parent. So there was a lot of dynamics. Now, I was talking to a new friend who's just started this book, and I don't think he's quite gotten to that point yet, where he's reading that part of my story. But I think there's a lot of people who could wonder why I would want to put this in my book. First of all, I have to say that I do use code names for most people, and I tell them that so that I'm not putting their actual name out there on the chopping block. I do also explain at the beginning of one of the chapters in this book that we are all still together, and that we all kind of went through a metamorphosis. And so it's not like if things started off rocky, things are still rocky in general. I mean, there's always family dynamics that are difficult, and nothing ever completely smooths out for anybody, no matter what, whether you're biologically related or not. But things really have come a long way, and things are good. And, I gave her a graduation gift, and, I attended, well, we couldn't attend her graduation in person because of COVID, but I watched her graduation like her boyfriend and best friend and father did. I watched it on the TV via Zoom. I trekked across town with her. I went out to dinner with her. She came across the room and hugged me and thanked me for things. We have a good relationship now. I also have put my stepdaughter and, of course, my boyfriend in the thank yous at the back of my book here. So we do have a good relationship. But I know some people might be thinking to themselves, okay, why are you griping? Why are you putting your family gripes out there? And I'll tell you, during my 30s, I had a number of friends who would tell me about their difficult situations with stepchildren. And in two situations, the relationship with their significant other, their marriage, didn't last because they couldn't handle the stepchildren situation and everything that went on. They felt there was a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of discord. Things didn't work out. I even remember a case where a friend of mine was on his second marriage, and he already had a son with his first wife, didn't intend to have any more children, but then his second wife got pregnant. And then he decided, well, he wanted his daughter to have a sibling, so they purposely made another child so that she would have a sibling. So then he ended up with two young girls. Now, he loved his daughters very much, but he said that pretty much things just became really dysfunctional with his wife. She wasn't interested in sex anymore. She didn't want to even do things with the kids a lot of times. She wouldn't even teach her kids how to cook brownies, or to be little girls and maybe to learn to cook. Nothing. She just didn't really want to do a lot. So he was constantly being like Mr. Mom and Dad too, because he wanted his daughters to know how to do certain things. Not that they should have to stay in the kitchen all the time, but he wanted them to have the fun of baking, and doing things. And he wanted his children to have an active parent who showed interest in them outside of just disciplining them or talking about school. And I remember this friend who was a very attractive guy, just 1 year, just 1 year older than me. Very attractive, very smart, worked for the same university I did. I'm sure lots of girls would have been interested in him, and he said, well, I really want a relationship that's about more than just a fling or sex. He said, I already have somebody who's offered me that, and we get along great, but that's all it is. And he said, I'm just going to bide my time. I am going to stay in my relationship, my marriage, until I am, past that point where my kids are kids. I'm going to wait till they're both 18, and then I'm going to leave my marriage. So he was literally planning this out, and in a sense doing time, because he said his wife just didn't really want to work on things, and things weren't getting better. And I felt really bad about that. So I thought, a lot of times when people are in difficult situations, you hear all those voices in your head saying, how on earth did I get myself in this situation? Or I should feel guilty for feeling this. I should feel guilty for feeling that. or other people have so many things easier than I do, and they just handle things so much better, or they don't have any problems at all. They married the perfect person, and their children or stepchildren are perfect, and everything's perfect and easy for them, but not for me. So I thought, I'm sure there's some people that have things easier than others, but I thought I would just write my story and say, you don't have to feel guilty for your feelings. I went through an array of feelings too. I'm no saint, believe me. I felt all kinds of things. I do have a tendency in my writing, as in my life, to analyze things. I try to take responsibility for the things I'm responsible for. But I just wanted to put my own story out there because I know that I'm not the only one who's gone through a difficult situation, and there are other people who will be able to relate. And maybe it'll even help somebody in some way say, okay, I'm not a terrible monster because I'm not always feeling, this really fantastic, smooth sailing sort of love for everybody and everything. And, it's difficult when there's a child involved. It's really a challenge. But at the same time, the child can't help it. They're in this situation they're in too, usually. I also, I write about reincarnation, so I also draw some little bits of, I don't know if you want to say conclusions, but I also think about the fact that Marilyn's mother had mental illness, and Marilyn felt abandoned by her father. But as I was writing this part of my story, I started thinking about how even if my father knew early on that I was his, assuming he did, I don't know, maybe he was terrified to become involved in the situation because maybe my mother, Gladys, during my last past life, scared the heck out of him. Maybe he was afraid to get involved with her more. Maybe he was afraid of bringing her into his current family, because the parent of the child has a lot to do with your life. If you're going to be involved with the child, the parent of the child becomes a part of your life too, and so do their issues. And, when things are difficult, when you have an adult who is not getting the help they need, whether it's their fault or not their fault, I'll just put it like that. It's still really hard when you have an adult who's trying to be in control of everything, and has a lot of passion and a lot of grit, but isn't very logical and isn't getting help. I don't think there's anything funny or fun or I would never want to put down someone who has any kind of mental illness. I'm not in the medical profession, and there, but for the grace of God go I, as people say. You never know, what problem you could end up with that would be difficult to deal with. But when an adult has serious mental illness and isn't getting help for whatever reason, it's a really difficult thing. So in writing this book, I said to myself, well, maybe it wasn't Norma Jean that Norma Jean's father was trying to avoid. Maybe it was the whole sticky, messy situation of dealing with a child and an adult who has mental illness and not getting help. So I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying it helped me to kind of look at things differently in terms of Marilyn's lifetime. That's all I'm saying. I think that it's important to share stories with other people. And one of the things that really is kind of bothersome to me in some ways and flattering in others is the way Marilyn's life has been put under a microscope and pretty much analyzed from every angle. And people are constantly trying to dredge up more and more and more about her life. And I'm sure a lot of falsehoods are also being put out there in the media. But that's one reason I feel that I want to put as much as I can about my truths, into my books and into my videos. Now, I understand people don't care about me like they do about Marilyn. I'm not a movie star. I don't have great talent. I've waited till I was in my 50s to start even making videos or writing books. I'm not young. I'm not particularly pretty. I'm not particularly sexy. Like I'm not working it to put that out there. You know, I mean, obviously I want to look good, but I mean, I'm not capitalizing on that, and that is not my forte, and that is not what I'm doing with my life. Okay. And, but at the same time, I feel like even though the level of interest in me is not what it is in Marilyn, I still feel like I want to put my truths out there so other people aren't making up things about me. If you think, that you can come to all kinds of conclusions about me based on whatever, my hair color or my age or where I say I live or one chapter in a book or something, you may be wrong. I don't know what, but I feel that because I've gotten so many interesting comments over the last couple of years, I want to put as much out there as possible. I want to put the truth out there about my current life. Now, I know there was one woman who claimed she was Marilyn, and she has multiple children. She's around my age. And actually, she was born the same year I was, just a month or so younger. And for a while, she kept chiding me and saying that Marilyn wanted children, and she has multiple children, and I don't have any of my own biological. And she was saying, so therefore I couldn't be Marilyn, because she was living Marilyn's life, because Marilyn wanted kids. And, I don't know what to say to that other than I've been other people prior to being Marilyn. Marilyn's is not the only lifetime I've lived. So I don't look at myself as a spin-off of Marilyn, a twin of Marilyn. I know I'm living the consecutive lifetime, the one that's come right after Marilyn's. I'm Marilyn Monroe reincarnated, but I'm not just a duplicate of Marilyn. And there's the whole history of my soul's history, the going way back when. It's all in me now, not just Marilyn's lifetime. Plus, there are my own genetic factors and my own situations, the family I was born into, the body I have now, the health I have now. There's a lot of different things that go into making decisions or different things happening during a current lifetime. It's not like, okay, whatever Marilyn would want is exactly what's going to happen right now in this lifetime because I'm picking up where I left off. I may not be an actress again for 2 or 3 more lifetimes, but I'm pretty sure I'll be an actress again. I might not be beautiful until like 6 lifetimes into the future or something again. I can't tell you, but I can say that my soul is Marilyn's. I'm living the consecutive lifetime to hers. And I just want to put everything out there. I want to put the truth out there. Now, there's a lot more in this than that. I talk about what it was like for me to publish my first book. I talk about how hard it was for me as a child. As time went on, it was harder and harder for me to stick up for myself sometimes because I would feel insecure or I'd question things, or, I never wanted to lose a competition in anything, but at the same time I felt guilty if I won because then I'd see somebody else lose. Just like all the crazy psychological things that can go on in a person's mind. I talk about just the strangeness of life and happenstances and how we never really know for sure what's going to happen. Even if we're always trying to control our lives, we never know what could really be around the next corner. I talk about going into the COVID lockdown, the initial stages, the initial 6 months or so of the COVID lockdown. I talk about going on the first podcast I ever appeared on. Actually, it's the only one to this date, but that was last November 2020. I talk about a variety of different things in this book. So here's my first book called Marilyn, Not Just Another Girl, The Myth About Sleeping in the Nude. Here's my second book called Marilyn, Thereafter the Fall, My Consequential Reincarnation. I actually have a third book that I'm working on publishing now. I just shipped it off to the publisher, so I'm assuming it's probably not going to be done for a few months, maybe September, October, something like that, if all goes well. I was going to call it Marilyn, Blondes Prefer Gentlemen, and that kind of fell through because I started Googling that. And the more I scrolled around, I had to scroll around for a while, but I found, I think there was something like an anti-harassment video from the 60s made with that title. Not the Maryland part, but the Blondes Prefer Gentlemen part. There was, I said Maryland, didn't I? With a D, like the state. I mean, Maryland. There was, I think, some play and some book or something written called Blondes Prefer Gentlemen. And a new friend of mine, Ron, who is also a publisher and an author, not a publisher, he's a published author. That's what he is. He's a published author. He's written some vampire romance fiction books where there are political undertones. And anyway, he was very nice. He's been talking to me the last month or so. And he said, I don't think there's really a copyright on, using the same thing in a book title necessarily. And then, of course, I was going to put the Marilyn in front of it, so that would have changed things somewhat. But I said, no, I need to have my own book title. So as of right now, book 3 should be coming out in a few months. And I have decided to call it Marilyn, Sex Symbol Reincarnated. And then the subtitle is All My Forbidden Flirtations. And it's going to be a lot about internet interactions and just how it's very easy to get swept up in flirtations and conversations on the internet, especially if you're still in COVID lockdown. But I think for years people have known that the internet is both wonderful and can be dangerous. It's very easy to type and hit enter and send things to people who you really don't know in person very well. And I'm just going to talk about flirtations and kind of the adult world a little bit too. So that's that. I just wanted to explain the kind of central part of my second book, Marilyn Thereafter the Fall, My Consequential Reincarnation. And I wish everybody who's a mother happy Mother's Day. Even if you're a puppy or kitty or bunny or pet horse or pet goldfish mama, whether you're a mama, a stepmama, or just someone who maybe mothers and nurtures someone, even if you don't have to. Like, there are a lot of wonderful women out there who nurture others and take care of others, even if they don't have children of their own. It could be somebody who's on the job site who's just always, bringing in the brownies or making the potted coffee for everybody, or making sure everybody, I don't know, gets home safely if there's a snowstorm in the middle of a work day or whatever. There are a lot of people who are nurturing and caring even if they've never given birth. And I imagine, and I will say this, there are a lot of couples where maybe they're same-sex couples and maybe they both consider themselves mothers or both consider themselves fathers, or maybe one considers himself a mother and the other a father. I don't know. But, whoever you are, if you are taking care of someone else and really giving your heart and your time and your effort to nurturing and teaching and protecting someone else, happy Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day. So anyway, that's what I want to say today. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. And don't forget to spoil your mother or your grandmother or your godmother or that special person who is nurturing you. Acknowledge them, even if you can't afford to do anything, even if it's just a phone call. One of the things I did was I had one time written my great aunt. She's in her 90s now. I wrote her a letter just about this and that, nothing special, nothing was really going on in my life, but she's also my godmother. And one time I wrote her a very brief letter, but I told her something that she did for me back during the 80s that I still remember to this day that I think is special, and that stuck in her mind. And she mentioned that to my mother a couple years later, and that just really stuck in her mind. So don't think that reminiscing with someone and telling them what specifically you appreciate about them is nothing. You never know what might stick with somebody else. And also, Father's Day is coming up, and it doesn't mean you have to wait until Father's Day to acknowledge your father either. Just because it is until June doesn't mean you can't call up your father and do the same and tell him how special he is to you, because nobody knows how much time any of us really has left. None of us does. So anyway, thinking about Mother's Day made me just think about how much we need to appreciate other people in our lives, especially those who take the time to mentor, nurture, and protect us. Have a good day.